Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Origins Battle Armor HeMan and Battle Armor Skeletor. That is right, my friends. We're going to go ahead and take a look at both of these guys in the same video since they are so similar to each other, but I'm pretty excited because these are our first deluxe action figures in the Origins lineup. And what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that they come on these new, larger card backs. And once again, I have to give amazing amount of credit to Mattel and the team behind these card backs because they are amazing. These do a fantastic job of paying homage to the vintage toy line, specifically those larger card backs that we saw with figures like, say, Thunder Punch HeMan, for example, because we've got the larger, wider card backs, but we also have the artwork up here, which is absolutely amazing. The artwork remains to be fantastic on this toy line. So we got this new image of Battle Armor HeMan and Battle Armor Skeletor up there alongside the logo. But you can also see we've got some extra accessories in here, such as interchangeable heads, some swappable hands, and one extra accessory we have not seen in the single packs before. And then when you rotate these card backs around to the backside, once again, treated to some amazingly gorgeous, very bright, colorful artwork at the top of the card back there to tell the story of these characters. It's amazing. I love it. Definitely one of the absolute highlights of the Origins toy line. Down below that, we've got our cross-sell showing off other figures that are coming soon or currently available. We got Clamp Champ down there. He's going to be one of the other deluxe figures, hopefully showing up pretty soon. I'm very excited for him. And then you can also see we've got our little action feature call-out showing you that the battle armor works just as it did on the vintage action figures. So let's go ahead and get these guys pulled out of these card backs, as beautiful as they are, so we can get a closer look at the figures within. So both Battle Armor HeMan and Battle Armor Skeletor include a brand new mini comic packaged in with them called Battle Armor Reborn. Features some awesome new artwork. Clamp Champ's in there, so I'm guessing it'll probably also come packaged with the Deluxe Clamp Champ. But I love these mini comics, man. I think it's so cool. We're getting new stories with some brilliant new artwork. Really, really fun stuff. So great to have that little pack-in bonus with both of these figures here. All right, we've got HeMan and Skeletor outside of the packaging. And of course, just like the rest of this line, they scale at just under 6 inches tall, but they're in that 5.5-inch retro scale. Of course, those vintage figures had the squat knees. These knees can be a little bit straighter because they added articulation. But if you've been collecting this line, if you've been following these videos, you already know that. So this is our first variations of HeMan and Skeletor to be released in Origins. Just like in the vintage line, we got the Battle Armor figures, which have always been fan favorites for both of these characters. So I'm going to look at them one by one. Let's go ahead and get Skeletor out of the way, and we will start by focusing on HeMan. So one of the things I do want to point out is this is the Origins style head sculpt that we have on HeMan, the new head for Origins, but this is a brand new face. You can see this one is different from the standard HeMan release, whereas this one kind of has like this yelling face going on there. It's got the open mouth, so, you know, a bit more expressive than what we saw on that standard release. There is, of course, a swappable head, but we'll get to that in just a bit. So the body there is modeled after the original Battle Armor HeMan, but it is a little bit different. First of all, the armor is a bit more of a flat silver. The old one did have a little bit of a shine to it. It wasn't like metallic or vac metal or anything like that, but this one definitely just looks more flat than the vintage one. And the other thing that's a little odd on this to me is that the actual little window right there for the battle armor, where the battle damage would be, is very small. Like, it looks like it's squished in. On the original figure, it was much larger. Like, it stretched basically the extent of the chest there, and for some reason it is really squeezed in. Now, when I initially saw this, my thought was that Mattel probably did this because they still had to work in the interchangeable arms, because all of the Origins figures have had swappable parts, including the arms that can pop out of socket. But the odd thing about this is that these figures, both He-Man and Skeletor, do not have removable arms. At least, not that I can tell. I mean, this is not coming out of socket. So honestly, since they removed the ability to swap the arms out at the shoulders, I don't know why this little window right here is so small. It's a bit strange looking. Also, the torso itself just seems like, I don't know, it's a little wide and a little flat. Like something about it just looks off as far as the proportions go. I don't know, it's just a little weird. The other thing about this that I noticed is that these figures both are very, very lightweight. The torsos are very hollow, which I guess is because of the working mechanism, but it makes the overall figures feel very lightweight, especially when you compare them to the vintage Battle Armor figures, which just have a lot more weight to them. So, I don't know, it was really weird. It just wasn't something I expected when I pulled it out of the box. Now, here's one thing I do really like. They actually added a holster to the back of the figure for the power sword. Now, here's where you can see how hollow it is, because you can actually see the inside of the torso right there. Totally hollowed out. But, you know, this is really nice because the little power sword that comes with the figure can slide right there in the back. I think that's fantastic. That's a new addition that we don't really see on the Battle Armor version of He-Man very often. Now, a lot of this figure is very similar to what we've seen with the standard figure in the Origins line. I do want to point out one of the differences is that the wraps on the boots are painted. I think that's really cool, so a nice little extra added detail there. And the articulation still functions exactly the same otherwise, and in fact, we do still have some removable parts. Of course, I talked about the head, so we can pop that head on and off that ball joint. You can still remove the torso from the waist. That peg is still there. We also do still have the interchangeable hands, so you can still pop the hands out at the wrists. So all of that articulation still seems to be the same, and you know, you got the boots there as well. So we still have swappable parts, just for some reason we can't swap them out at the shoulders on this guy. So, that action feature, it works just like on the vintage figure. In fact, it even works a little bit better, because you really have to give a good push. See how you press it in, and then when you let go, it should rotate upwards. There you go. You got one slash. Do it again. Boom. 2 slashes. It's really cool, honestly. You know, and then you can just easily, you got to press it in. You can easily rotate it back down. It comes back to like the clean Battle Armor there. It's a lot of fun. I like seeing this action feature intact. It was always a really, really cool feature in the original line. And it does work with the weapons, you know, like, so if you want to actually take Skeletor's sword and bash him in the chest, look at that. You actually look like he's getting scratches across the armor. It is really, really fun. So, swappable parts there. I mentioned that we've got that alternate head. We saw it in the packaging there. So let's go ahead and put that on here. Ah, yes. This is the head that I feel like a lot of us were waiting for. This head is based on the vintage He-Man action figure. And man, to me, that just looks like He-Man. I love this. In fact, this is definitely my preferred look for the character. I think this looks a ton better. And of course, we're going to want to see what this looks like on the original figure. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's bring in the standard Origins He-Man figure. And of course, if we do some head swapping, you know, in fact, I'm also going to go ahead and swap the torsos, because that way we can get the new boots on the original He-Man with the painted wraps. And with that head, there he is. There's He-Man. That's the He-Man that I know and love. I just think that looks so much better, and I'm really happy that that original style head is included with Battle Armor He-Man. Of course, the heads can swap easily between the two figures. The skin tones seem to match up really well, so that way you can mix and match and get whatever your favorite look is for He-Man. But yep, for me, I definitely love that vintage He-Man head. I feel like I need more of these just to get a couple extra of those heads, to be perfectly honest. So as far as accessories go, He-Man does come with the battle axe and the half power sword again, just like on the standard release. However, this time they are colored in more of a silver color that matches up with the armor there. Instead of that, like, that axe was like almost a bluish color on the original release. So it's nice to get it in the silver here, but otherwise it does appear to be the same sculpt. And yes, the power sword is the half sword again. That's so that if you've got Skeletor, you can put them together and make the complete power sword, which is a great nod to the original story from the original toy line. But for me, I do really wish we could get like a full, complete power sword as well. Like, I get it. I understand why we're doing the half power sword thing. I just, I want a full, solid power sword for my He-Man figure to hold on to. So I hope that's something we're going to be getting down the road here. So He-Man also does have one swappable hand, which is really nice because you've got that open hand, but he does come with an extra gripping hand. So if you want to have him posed with both weapons in his hands at the same time, that is possible with this guy. And then the last thing we get is this cool lightning burst. Now this is neat because blast effects for Masters toys are very few and far between. We don't see these very often. And this is neat because they actually have like this little diamond shape inside there. That is because it has got two different sizes. So that way this thing will fit on the power sword while it's a half sword, or it will fit with the full sword if you put both the He-Man and Skeletor's swords together. So if we did that, of course, that's going to make the sword a little bit thicker. But that way, if you put it in the other direction, it still works. So that way you can pose He-Man holding his arm up with this crazy burst blasting off the sword. It's a little big, but you know what? It's fun. I think that's a fun added accessory and definitely makes for not only some fun options for display, but man, that's fun for playing too. I think that would have been really cool to have something like that when I was a kid. So that's going to bring us over to Battle Armor Skeletor. A lot of the things I mentioned on the armor itself is very similar to He-Man. He's still a little lightweight feeling because he's got this hollowed out torso. I will say that the battle armor does look a bit better on Skeletor. It doesn't look as odd or as like wide as He-Man, like even standing them side by side. Something just looks weird with the proportions to me on He-Man because of like how far out his shoulders are. It just doesn't look that odd on Skeletor. And maybe it's like an illusion, like my eyes are playing tricks on me just because he's got like this added detail on his armor there. But it definitely looks a little bit better. He still has a squished logo in the middle. It's not as big or as wide as it was on the vintage figure, but the design is very similar. Like we even have like the cool little skull on there. I always liked the look of Skeletor's battle armor. It's one of my favorites. It's very cool. And they did the same thing here. Mattel added the cool little sword hilt on the back there so we can actually holster the sword. I think that is a really, really cool inclusion there. And of course, it works exactly the same way. When you give it a little press there, you get the little dings. I really like how the silver is like shiny and metallic. It really stands out on Skeletor there because, he's got that purple armor with the green bat. So that silver just looks really cool. So like He-Man sword there and we'll go, pa-cow, 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 yeah. I mean, seriously, that is a fun action feature. It is really, really cool to play with there. So the armor itself is really interesting, and I don't know if this is coming across. It's probably not. There's a little bit of like a glittery speckle in there, and it's a little more prominent on the logo there in the middle than it is on the actual armor. But when you look at this under the lights, you can see just a little bit of like a glittery speckle in there, which gives his armor just a little bit of a shine. It's pretty nice. I like that. So the head there is really interesting. This is like a completely new head, totally new look for Skeletor. It's got a very evil look to it, right? Like he's got these evil eyes and almost kind of like this smirk going on there. I like this head sculpt. This isn't based on anything that I'm aware of. I don't think I've ever seen a Skeletor head that looks like this before, but I like it. I think it's pretty cool. Now we can also swap that off for the extra head that is included. And this is a pretty neat head too, because I do think this one is inspired by the vintage toy. In fact, when you look at it from the right side, it definitely looks like it's supposed to be from the vintage toy. But really interestingly, on the left over here, he's got like this smirk. He's doing like this weird half smile thing, and it's a bit strange. Like this is a very happy looking Skeletor. I like the overall sculpt. I don't know. I'm not sure why we've got like such a grin on his face. He just looks very happy. But it's cool that we've got two different versions of the Skeletor head there so that you can do whichever one you want. And once again, let's go and bring in the standard release of Skeletor. We'll stand them side by side just so you can see what they look like. Again, you can swap the heads between the figures just fine. I will say that the purples used on this new Battle Armor figure are a bit of a more deeper purple. They almost have more of a bluish tint to the original release. So the hoods are a little different when matching it up with that figure, but it's not that noticeable. It actually looks pretty good, still swapping the heads if that's something that you want to do. So Skeletor does also include a swappable hand, so we can do the same thing with him. We can either have the opened left hand, which is very similar to what we got on that original release, or we can give him two gripping hands, which is very nice because now we can pose him with both his Havoc staff and his sword if we want to. I think that is a very important thing to do with Skeletor. On top of that, we've got one new accessory. Mattel created a brand new shield for Skeletor. This is not based on anything that I've seen, at least not that I'm aware of, but it's a purple shield. It's just cast in purple plastic, and it's got like this little skull on it, which looks like a mad ball to me. But you can see it's got like the little clip that goes over his wrist, and it's got the same kind of handle on there that HeMan's does. So I think it's more meant for the open hand. You can put it in the gripping hand. That actually works too. But one thing I will say is that clip goes, it's really hard to get it around his wrist because he's got those finned wrists there. So it almost doesn't work as good as you'd like it to, but it is still possible to get him to hold on to it. And yeah, I guess you've got yourself a shield for Skeletor now, if that's something you feel like you've been missing. All right, guys, it's comparison time. So I want to stand the Battle Armor He-Man alongside his vintage action figure counterpart, just so you can see these two side by side. That way you can really see what I was talking about specifically with the armor there, with the logo being so much bigger. Honestly, I just really like the look of the vintage figure so much. So the new ones do just look off to me. They just look a little off. And I do want to go and stand him alongside the Masters of the Universe Classics version of Battle Armor He-Man as well, just because I'm sure that's something that folks want to see. And then let's flip on over to Battle Armor Skeletor, again compared to the vintage figure. My personal vintage one has seen better days. He's got quite a bit of wear going on, but still gives you an idea of the similarities and the differences in the actual armor there. And just like with He-Man, I do want to go ahead and stand him alongside the Masters of the Universe Classics version of Skeletor that came out, gosh, it feels like about 10 years ago probably now, which is crazy. But interesting looking at these side by side. So there you go, my friends. There is a look at the brand new Battle Armor He-Man and Battle Armor Skeletor from the Masters of the Universe Origins line. So overall, I do think these are fun figures. Now, my biggest nitpicks is that I think the Battle Armor looks odd, especially on He-Man. Something is weird with the proportions. I don't like the squished battle damage areas with the symbols. They just, I don't know, the translation from the vintage toys didn't seem to work as well on this particular release. I look at the vintage Battle Armor He-Man, and that armor just looks so much better to me, but that's my personal opinion. Maybe you feel different. I will give it to them. The action feature is still a lot of fun, and it works really well. In fact, it works better than the vintage ones because it's probably a little bit of an improved mechanism, or at least it's new. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's new and it'll wear out over time, but it's a fun action feature, and it's really cool to see that included. I also love the interchangeable heads and the interchangeable hands in a line where they've been able to swap parts from the beginning. I feel like that's something that we should have always been getting, so I'm glad we're getting those with the deluxe releases, which allows for even more mixing and matching between your figures, giving us so many more options for display. So, fun figures. Love the packaging, and these are hitting retail stores right now. In fact, a lot of people are finding them at Target, which is fantastic. So we can get out there. We don't have to hunt them down at Walmart anymore. We can actually get them at Target, or you can pre-order them at the online stores. I will even link down in the video description. Guys, thank you so very much for watching this video, and until next time.
The Toys of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is available for pre-order now. This official guidebook is published by Dark Horse Books and features over 750 pages of photos and information on your favorite He-Man and She-Ra action figures. And don't miss out on the exclusive bundle pack available for pre-order now from PowerCon. This bundle includes the official guide as well as an exclusive character guide supplement that you won't be able to buy anywhere else. Don't miss out. You have the power.